The morning sun cast long shadows across the ruins of New Geneva Colony as Lieutenant Jake Morrison kicked at the blackened debris with his boot. 3 months had passed since the mysterious energy storm swept through the settlement, leaving behind twisted metal and questions nobody could answer. The colonists had evacuated safely, but whatever hit this place had turned their thriving community into a graveyard of melted buildings and strange, crystalline formations. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and checked his scanner again. The readings were off the charts, showing energy signatures that made no sense according to human science. Command had sent his team to investigate, hoping to find clues about what caused the disaster. So far, they had found nothing but more mysteries. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Corporal Tim Brooks from behind a collapsed warehouse. His voice carried an edge of excitement that made Jake hurry over. Behind the rubble, Tim stood next to what looked like a massive crystal growing straight out of the ground. The thing was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It stood 12 feet tall, its surface smooth as glass, but somehow alive with swirling patterns of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The crystal was perfectly clear, yet it seemed to contain entire galaxies spinning within its depths. "How did we miss this yesterday?" Jake asked, running his scanner over the artifact. The device went crazy, beeping and flashing warnings about energy levels that shouldn't exist. "It wasn't here yesterday, sir," Tim replied. "I'm sure of it. We mapped this entire area. This thing just appeared overnight." Jake circled the crystal slowly, noting how the ground around it had changed. "Where?" "Yesterday, there had been scorched earth. Now strange symbols were carved into the dirt in perfect geometric patterns. The symbols seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them, like they had a life of their own." "Get me a full spectrum analysis," Jake ordered, "and contact the science team back at base. Tell them we found something big." As Tim worked on his equipment, Jake noticed something else. The air around the crystal hummed with a low frequency that he could feel in his bones. It reminded him of something, but he couldn't place what. The sound was almost musical, like the lowest note on a pipe organ played so quietly you could barely hear it. 2 hours later, the science team arrived, with Dr. Helen Foster leading the group. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had seen more alien artifacts than anyone else in human space. Her team immediately began setting up their equipment around the crystal, taking measurements and photographs from every angle. "Fascinating," Dr. Foster muttered as she studied her readings. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. The crystal appears to be some kind of transmitter, but it's not sending any signals we can detect." "Maybe it's broken," suggested Tim. "Or maybe it's waiting for something," Jake replied, staring at the swirling patterns inside the crystal. Something about those patterns seemed familiar, like a song he had heard long ago, but couldn't remember. The investigation continued through the afternoon with no major breakthroughs. The crystal remained silent and mysterious, giving up none of its secrets to human technology. As evening approached, Dr. Foster was ready to call it a day when they heard music drifting across the ruins. Lisa Park sat on a broken wall about 50 yards away, playing her violin as she often did when the scientific work got boring. She was part of the colony's civilian support staff, a young woman who had come to New Geneva to teach music to the colonists' children. Now she played alone among the ruins, her melody haunting and beautiful in the growing darkness. The music was Batch, one of the old Earth classics that never seemed to go out of style. Lisa's fingers moved across the strings with practiced skill, drawing notes that seemed to hang in the air like visible things. She played with her eyes closed, lost in the music, unaware that her audience had grown beyond the small group of scientists. Jake was the first to notice the change. The crystal's soft humming grew louder, matching the frequency of Lisa's violin. The patterns inside began to spin faster, and new colors appeared in the swirling depths. Light began to pulse from the artifact in rhythm with the music, growing brighter with each note. "Lisa," Jake called out. "Don't stop playing." She opened her eyes in surprise, but kept her bow moving across the strings. The crystal responded immediately, its light growing so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. The carved symbols around its base began to glow with the same inner fire, and the humming sound grew into a harmony that seemed to come from the earth itself. Dr. Foster's equipment went wild, recording energy levels that broke every scale they had. "It's transmitting," she shouted over the music. "The crystal is sending out a signal across multiple dimensions." Lisa, caught up in the moment, began to play with more passion than ever before. She added her own variations to Batch's composition, letting her heart guide her fingers. The crystal responded to every change, its light show becoming more complex and beautiful with each new musical phrase. Then something unexpected happened. The crystal began to sing back. At first, it was just harmonics, mathematical echoes of Lisa's melody. But as she continued to play, the crystal's voice grew stronger and more complex. It wasn't just copying her music anymore. It was adding to it, creating a duet between human creativity and alien technology. The song lasted for 10 minutes that felt like hours. When Lisa finally lowered her violin, breathing hard from the effort, the crystal's light slowly faded back to its original soft glow. But something had changed. The air around the artifact felt different now, charged with possibilities that hadn't existed before. "What just happened?" Lisa asked, still holding her violin like a weapon. Dr. Foster stared at her readings in amazement. "You activated it," she said. "Whatever this thing is, it was waiting for music. Specifically, it was waiting for a violin." Jake looked up at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, the crystal signal was racing across the galaxy at speeds that defied physics. He had no way of knowing that this moment would change everything for humanity, or that Lisa's simple act of playing music had just announced to the entire galaxy that Earth's children were ready for the greatest test in cosmic history. The crystal pulsed once more, as if saying goodbye, and then returned to its patient waiting. But the signal was already traveling beyond the reach of human space, carrying with it the mathematical signature of a species that had just proven they possessed something the galaxy had been waiting to find for millions of years: music. Universal language that could bridge the gap between worlds, species, and dimensions. And humanity, without knowing it, had just spoken their first word in a conversation that would reshape the stars themselves. Deep in the heart of the Andromeda Galaxy, the great council chamber floated in the void between stars. The massive structure had served as the meeting place for the Dominion Council for over 100,000 years. 12 different species had gathered here to rule the galaxy with cold logic and absolute order. They had crushed rebellions, ended wars, and kept peace through fear and superior technology. Elder Zixthara of the Veilten race stood in the center of the chamber, her crystalline body glowing with ancient power. She was the oldest member of the council, having lived for nearly 50,000 years. Her people were made of living crystal, beings of pure mathematics who had given up emotion long ago in favor of perfect logic. Around her, the other council members waited in their floating platforms, each one representing a different path to evolutionary perfection. The signal had reached them 3 hours ago, traveling faster than light through dimensions that most species couldn't even detect. It was a simple musical transmission, but Zixthara recognized it immediately. Her crystal form flickered with colors that showed deep concern, something her species rarely displayed. "Council members," she began, her voice ringing like distant chimes, "we face a crisis that threatens everything we have built. The signal you have all received is not random noise from a primitive world. It is the resonance challenge. A wave of shock passed through the chamber. Council member Thokvar of the Machine Race Nexus clicked his metal fingers against his platform. In disbelief, his people had replaced their organic bodies with perfect mechanical forms millions of years ago, becoming living computers that could process information faster than stars could burn. Impossible, Thokvar stated in his electronic voice. The resonance challenge is a myth, a story told by primitive races who still believe in magic and fairy tales. Zixthara's form flashed with angry red light. I was there, machine being. I was young when the architects still walked among the stars. I saw them place their tests throughout the galaxy before they vanished into whatever realm they chose for their final rest. She gestured with one crystalline arm, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the mathematical structure of the signal they had received, its patterns complex beyond normal understanding. But hidden within the chaos were sequences that made the council members recoil in fear. Look closely, Zixthara continued. See the harmonic resonance patterns? The dimensional frequencies that should not exist? This signal carries the signature of the old ones, the architects who built the foundation of our civilization before, disappearing without explanation. Council member Velinari of the energy beings, called the Flux, spoke next, her voice like wind through empty space. Her people had evolved beyond physical form, becoming creatures of pure energy who lived between the stars themselves. If this is truly the resonance challenge, then we know what it means. The legends speak of a final test, one that would grant unlimited power to whoever could solve it. And according to the same legends, added Council Member Brax of the warrior race, Cadmiran, the test can only be completed by a species that possesses something we have all evolved beyond. Something the architects called the creative spark. The council fell into uncomfortable silence. They all knew what the creative spark meant, though none of them would speak the word aloud. It meant art, music, poetry, and all the other useless emotions that primitive species clung to before they achieved true enlightenment. Every member of the Dominion Council had long ago abandoned such childish things in favor of logic, efficiency, and power. Zixthara brought up another hologram, this one showing a small blue-green world in a distant spiral arm of the galaxy. The signal originated from this planet. Our databases identify it as Earth, home to a young species called humans. They achieved spaceflight only recently and have barely spread beyond their home system. Then they pose no threat, Thokvar declared. We can eliminate them with a single battle fleet. Problem solved. You underestimate the danger, Zixthara warned. The architects did not create simple tests. If these humans have activated the resonance challenge, it means they possess whatever quality the architects were searching for. And if they complete the test, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Every council member understood the implications. The architects had been the most powerful beings in galactic history. Their technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic, even to species that had mastered faster-than-light travel and energy manipulation. If the humans gained access to that power, they could destroy the Dominion Council and remake the galaxy, according to their primitive ideas of freedom and chaos. Council member Suthros of the Hive Mind Collective spoke through 1,000 voices at once. His species had merged their individual minds into a single consciousness that spanned multiple star systems. We must act quickly. Every moment we delay gives these humans more time to unlock the architect's secrets. Agreed, rumbled Council. Member Goralth of the Stone Beings, called the Eternal. His people had evolved from living rock, becoming creatures so patient they measured time in geological ages. When even the Eternal spoke of urgency, the situation was truly dire. Zixthara began issuing orders with the efficiency that had kept the Dominion Council in power for millennia. Contact all fleet commanders. I want 12 battle groups moving toward human space within the next solar cycle. No survivors, no exceptions. We will not allow these primitives to upset the order we have spent eons creating. What about the other young species in that region? Asked Velinari. The humans have made contact with several neighboring worlds. Eliminate them as well, Zixtara replied without hesitation. We cannot risk the possibility that they might learn from the humans' example. The creative spark must not be allowed to spread. As the council members began coordinating their fleets, none of them noticed the small tremor that ran through Zixtara's crystalline form. Deep in her ancient memory, she recalled the last words the architects had spoken before their departure. They had warned that the galaxy would one day face a choice between sterile perfection and chaotic growth, between the cold certainty of logic and the wild possibilities of imagination. The Dominion Council had chosen logic, efficiency, and control. They had built a galaxy where every world followed the same rules, where every species eventually evolved into the same pattern of emotionless perfection. It was a beautiful system, orderly and predictable. But now, somewhere in the darkness of space, a young woman's violin had awakened something that had been sleeping for millions of years. The architect's final test was beginning, and Zixtara had the terrible feeling that her perfect, logical civilization was about to discover just how dangerous creativity could be. The council meeting ended with orders for genocide, but the real war had already begun. It was a war between two ways of thinking, two paths of evolution, and two completely different ideas about what the galaxy should become. The humans didn't know it yet, but they were about to become the champions of every chaotic, creative, beautiful thing that the Dominion Council had spent millennia trying to eliminate. And somewhere in the space between dimensions, the architects' ancient test continued to unfold, waiting to see which side truly deserved to inherit the stars. Commander Alex Rivera stood on the bridge of the Isharmony, watching the impossible sight unfold on his main screen. 12 massive alien fleets had appeared at the edge of human space 3 days ago, their ships unlike anything in Earth's databases. The vessels were beautiful and terrifying, made of materials that seemed to bend light around them, and powered by energies that human science couldn't explain. "Sir, they're not responding to any of our communication attempts," reported Lieutenant Danny Brooks from the communications station. "We've tried every frequency, every protocol we know. They just keep moving toward our colonies." Alex rubbed his tired eyes. He had been awake for 36 hours straight, ever since the alien fleets peered without warning. Earth Command had promoted him to Fleet Commander and given him every available ship, but humanity's entire space navy consisted of only 47 vessels. Most of them were cargo haulers and survey ships with basic defensive weapons. "What's the status on the civilian evacuations?" Alex asked. "New Geneva colony is completely empty," replied Captain Maria Santos from the tactical station. "The other frontier worlds are loading their people onto transport ships as fast as they can. But sir, we don't have enough ships to evacuate everyone. If these aliens decide to attack the inner colonies..." Alex nodded grimly. Intelligence reports suggested the alien fleets contained enough firepower to glass entire planets. Humanity's only advantage was that the aliens seemed to be moving slowly, as if they were studying human defenses before making their final assault. A new alarm sounded on the bridge, and Lieutenant Sarah Kim called out from the sensor station. "Commander, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the artifact site on New Geneva. The crystal that Dr. Foster's team discovered is active again." "Put it on screen," Alex ordered. The main display switched to show the ruins of New Geneva colony. The mysterious crystal now towered 50 feet above the ground, having grown to 3 times its original size. It pulsed with brilliant light that could be seen from orbit and energy readings showed it was broadcasting something across multiple dimensions. "Sir," Sarah continued, "there are people down there. It looks like some of the colonists stayed behind." Alex enhanced the image and saw a small group of figures near the crystal. He recognized Dr. Foster's team, but there were others as well. Civilians who should have evacuated days ago were gathered around the artifact with musical instruments in their hands. "Get me a communication link with the surface," Alex ordered. A few seconds later, Dr. Foster's voice came through the speakers. "Commander Rivera, thank goodness you're still here. We've made an incredible discovery about the crystal. Doctor, you need to evacuate immediately. Those alien fleets are moving into attack position." "That's exactly why we stayed," Dr. Foster replied. "The crystal responds to music, specifically to violin harmonics. But we've learned it's not just responding, it's amplifying and redirecting the musical energy. When Lisa plays near the crystal, it creates some kind of protective field." Alex frowned at the screen. "What do you mean, protective field?" "Watch this," came another voice. It was Lisa Park, the young violinist who had first activated the crystal. "I'm going to play something for you." Lisa raised her violin and began to play a piece Alex didn't recognize. It was beautiful and haunting, with notes that seemed to reach directly into his soul. But something else happened as she played. The crystal's light grew brighter, and the energy readings on his ship's sensors went wild. "My God," whispered Captain Santos. "Commander, look at the tactical display." Alex turned to see something impossible. The nearest alien ship, a massive vessel shaped like a twisted spear, was slowing down. Its energy signatures were fluctuating, and what looked like electrical discharges were running along its hull. "The music is interfering with their technology," Dr. Foster explained over the comm. "We don't understand how, but the crystal is broadcasting Lisa's music as some kind of energy wave. The more complex and emotional the piece, the stronger the effect." Lisa finished her song, and the alien ship's systems seemed to stabilize. But Alex had seen enough to realize what they were dealing with. "Doctor, get everyone away from that crystal. I'm sending down shuttles to evacuate you right now." "No." "Commander," Lisa's voice came through clearly. "This might be our only chance to defend ourselves. Let me try something else." Before Alex could stop her, Lisa began playing again. This time she chose a piece that made Alex's heart race. It was the Battle Hymn of the Republic, one of the old American songs that every human knew by heart. But Lisa wasn't playing it like a simple march. She added her own variations, pouring all her fear and determination into every note. The effect on the alien fleet was immediate and dramatic. The lead ship's hull began to crack, strange lights flickering across its surface. Other vessels in the formation started to drift out of position, their navigation systems apparently confused by the musical energy waves. "Incredible," breathed Captain Santos. "It's like the music is scrambling their computers." Alex realized they might have found humanity's secret weapon. "Sarah, patch me through to all ships in the fleet. Emergency broadcast on all frequencies." When the communication channels opened, Alex spoke quickly and clearly. "All vessels, this is Commander Rivera. I need every musician on every ship to report to their bridge immediately. Bring any instrument you have. We're about to try something that's either brilliant or completely insane." Within minutes, reports came flooding in from across the human fleet. The cargo ship New Boston had a jazz quartet among its crew. The research vessel Einstein carried a small orchestra that played for the scientists during long missions. Even the military ships had crew members who played guitar or harmonica. In their spare time, "Attention all musicians," Alex announced. "I want you to start playing. Anything you know, anything that moves you. Play like your life depends on it, because it probably does." The result was chaos at first. dozens of different songs being played. At the same time, creating a musical mess that should have been horrible to listen to. But something amazing happened. The crystals scattered throughout human space, crystals that no one had noticed before, began to respond to the cacophony of human music. On mining stations, in research labs, even on some of the older colony ships, mysterious crystal formations started glowing and pulsing in rhythm with the music. They amplified the sound, cleaned it up, and broadcast it as waves of pure energy that rolled across space. Like tsunamis of organized chaos, the alien fleets reacted as if they were being attacked by invisible weapons. Ships that had never known defeat began to malfunction. Navigation systems failed, weapons powered down, and entire vessels drifted helplessly as their crews struggled to understand what was happening to them. "Commander," reported Sarah with amazement in her voice, "the alien fleets are retreating. All 12 groups are pulling back beyond the edge of our sensor range." Alex couldn't believe what he was seeing. Humanity's greatest crisis had been solved not by superior technology or military tactics, but by music. The thing that made humans different from every other species in the young galaxy, their love of art and emotional expression, had become their most powerful weapon. "Keep playing," Alex ordered his fleet. "Everyone keep playing until those ships are gone." And across human space, on ships and stations and colonies, people played their hearts out. They played old songs and new ones, classical pieces and popular tunes, folk music from a dozen different Earth cultures. They played with instruments and voices, alone and together, creating a symphony of human spirit that echoed through dimensions the aliens couldn't understand. For the first time since the crisis began, Alex allowed himself to smile. Humanity had found their place in the galactic community, and it wasn't as conquerors or victims. They were the musicians, the dreamers, the ones who could turn emotion into energy and art into armor. The war was just beginning, but humans had discovered something the aliens had forgotten long ago. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the one that destroys, it's the one that creates. 3 weeks after the first alien retreat, the war had changed completely. What started as a desperate fight for survival had become something no one could have predicted. Across human space, musicians were now treated like elite soldiers, and concert halls had been turned into training centers for humanity's strangest military unit. Sam Davis sat at his piano aboard the converted cruise ship Liberty Bell, his fingers dancing across the keys with practiced ease. He had been a jazz musician before the war, playing small clubs on Mars Colony for tourists who wanted a taste of old Earth culture. Now he was part of something much bigger, something that was reshaping how humans thought about war itself. "Ready for another test run, Sam?" asked Captain Jenny Morris from the ship's intercom. The Liberty Bell had been turned into a mobile command center, equipped with the most powerful crystal amplifiers human engineers could build. "Always ready, Captain?" Sam replied, cracking his knuckles. "What's the target today?" "We've got an alien scout ship trying to sneak past our outer defenses. It's using some kind of stealth technology that makes it nearly invisible to our sensors. Think you can find it with that jazz magic of yours?" Sam smiled and began to play. But this wasn't the structured, predictable music that classical musicians like Lisa Park specialized in. This was jazz, wild and unpredictable, full of sudden changes and unexpected turns. His fingers found a rhythm that seemed to pulse with life, then broke away into improvisation that even he couldn't predict. The crystal arrays throughout the ship responded immediately, their light patterns shifting and changing in ways that matched Sam's musical creativity. The amplified sound waves rolled out from the Liberty Bell like invisible fingers, probing the empty space around them for anything that didn't belong. Within minutes, the ship's sensors detected something that shouldn't have been there. The alien scout ship had been hiding behind a field of distorted space-time, But Sam's improvisational jazz had found the gaps in their camouflage. The chaotic, unpredictable nature of his music confused the alien technology in ways that their engineers had never anticipated. "Got it," announced Captain Morris. "The scout ship is trying to retreat, but its navigation systems are scrambled." "Nice work, Sam." Meanwhile, on the asteroid mining station Beethoven's Hammer, drummer Maya Johnson was facing a different kind of challenge. The aliens had learned to adapt to some types of human music, but Maya had discovered something they couldn't handle at all: pure rhythm without melody. Maya sat behind her drum kit in the station's main cargo bay, surrounded by crystal formations that had grown from the asteroid's core over the past few weeks. Her drums were connected directly to the station's power grid, turning each beat into a pulse of energy that could be felt across multiple star systems. "Incoming gravity bomb," reported Station Commander Pete Williams over the intercom. Aliens are trying to collapse our orbit and send us crashing into the asteroid field." Maya nodded and began her assault on the drums. She didn't play a song. She played pure rhythm, the mathematical heartbeat that underlies all music. Her sticks moved so fast they blurred, creating patterns that seemed simple but were actually incredibly complex. Each beat was precisely timed to interfere with the alien weapon's gravitational waves. The gravity bomb, a weapon that could crush planets, met Maya's rhythmic energy head-on and simply fell apart. The alien technology depended on perfect mathematical calculations, but Maya's drumming introduced chaos into their equations. Every beat shifted the gravitational field slightly, turning their precision weapon into harmless vibrations that dissipated into space. "Threat neutralized," Commander Williams announced. "Maya, that was incredible. How did you know it would work?" "Rhythm is mathematics," Maya replied, still playing softer patterns to keep the local space stable. "But it's mathematics with soul. The aliens can copy our math, but they can't copy what makes us human." Back on New Geneva Colony, Lisa Park and Ray Williams had been working together to perfect their technique. Ray was a violin virtuoso who had studied at the best music schools on Earth before the war began. His technical skill, combined with Lisa's natural intuition, created something the aliens found completely impossible to counter. They stood together in the ruins of the old colony center, their violins singing in perfect harmony. But this wasn't just beautiful music. It was a weapon of incredible power. As they played, reality itself seemed to bend around them. Space-time rippled like water, and small tears appeared in the fabric of the universe. "Careful with the high notes," Ray warned, as they reached a particularly complex passage. "Last time you opened a portal to somewhere, and we still don't know where that somewhere was." Lisa nodded, keeping her playing controlled but passionate. They had learned that human emotion was the key to their power. The aliens could analyze their music and copy the mathematical structures, but they couldn't reproduce the feelings that gave the music its strength. Dr. Foster watched from a safe distance, her instruments recording everything. "Remarkable," she murmured to her assistant. "They're not just disrupting alien technology anymore. They're actually manipulating the fundamental forces of physics. The crystals are responding to their emotional state as much as their musical technique." As if to prove her point, Lisa's violin hit a note that seemed to come from her very soul. The sound was filled with all her fear for humanity's future, her determination to protect her people, and her wonder at the strange new world they were creating. The crystal behind her flared with light, so bright it could be seen from orbit, and a pulse of energy raced outward faster than light itself, across the galaxy. That pulse reached the retreating alien fleets. Ships that had been regrouping for another attack suddenly found their weapon systems failing. The energy wave didn't destroy their technology. It confused it, made it forget how to function. Computers that had operated flawlessly for millions of years suddenly couldn't remember basic programming. Navigation systems designed by the galaxy's greatest minds became as lost as children in the dark. On the Dominion Council's flagship, Elder Zixthara watched her tactical displays flicker and fail. Her crystalline form shimmered with colors that showed deep frustration and growing fear. "Report," she demanded from her subordinates. "All fleets are experiencing system failures," replied her tactical officer. "The humans' music is evolving, becoming more sophisticated. Our countermeasures are no longer effective." Zixthara studied the chaotic patterns on her screens. The human music was creating interference across dimensions that her people had barely learned to perceive. It was as if the humans were speaking a language that the universe itself understood, while the Dominion Council could only listen in. Confused silence. "How is this possible?" she asked. "We are the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Our technology surpasses theirs by millions of years." "Perhaps," suggested another officer carefully, "that is exactly the problem. We have become so advanced that we have forgotten something the humans still remember." Zixthara turned her ancient eyes toward the distant human worlds. For the first time in 50,000 years of life, she felt something she had thought her species had evolved beyond. She felt doubt. The humans weren't just fighting with superior technology or better tactics. They were fighting with something the Dominion Council had deliberately abandoned in their pursuit of perfect logic. They were fighting with their hearts, their dreams, their stubborn refusal to accept that the universe should be cold and orderly. And somehow, impossibly, the universe seemed to be listening to them instead of to the logical perfection of the Dominion Council. The galaxy itself was choosing chaos over order, creativity over control, and the wild possibilities of human imagination over the sterile certainty of alien logic. The war was far from over, but the balance of power was shifting. Humanity had found their voice in the cosmic symphony, and they were using it to rewrite the rules of reality itself. The journey to the galactic core took 6 months, traveling through space that bent and twisted in impossible ways. Lisa Park and Ray Williams stood together on the bridge of the ESS Symphony, humanity's first ship powered entirely by musical energy. The vessel itself was a work of art, its hull embedded with crystals that sang softly as they moved through hyperspace. Commander Alex Rivera watched the navigation displays with amazement. They were traveling faster than anything inhuman. History, riding waves of harmonic energy that the architect crystals generated in response to the musicians playing. The aliens had stopped chasing them weeks ago, apparently as confused by the ship's movement patterns as they were by everything else humanity did. "How much further?" Lisa asked, looking out at the swirling clouds of gas and newborn stars that marked the galaxy's heart. "According to the crystal navigation, we're almost there," replied Dr. Foster from her science station. "The harmonic readings are off the charts. Whatever the architects built at the galactic core, it's massive." Ray tuned his violin carefully, preparing for whatever they might find. Over the past months, he and Lisa had learned to play together with perfect synchronization. Their music had evolved beyond anything either of them thought possible, creating melodies that seemed to reach into other dimensions and bring back echoes of cosmic truth. "There," Captain Jenny Morris called out from the pilot station. "Dead ahead." The main screen showed something that made everyone fall silent. At the exact center of the galaxy, where a massive black hole should have been, there was instead a structure so large it defied understanding. It looked like a cathedral made of crystallized music, its spires reaching across light years of space. The entire structure pulsed with gentle light, and even through the ship's hull, they could hear it singing. "My God," whispered Dr. Foster, "it's beautiful." As they approached the structure, new details became visible. The cathedral was covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change, forming patterns that looked almost like musical notation. But this wasn't any kind of music that human or alien science had ever seen. It was mathematics turned into art, physics transformed into poetry. The East Symphony was drawn toward a docking bay that opened like a flower as they approached. The ship settled gently onto a platform made of the same singing crystal as everything else, and the bay sealed itself behind them with atmospheric fields that somehow felt welcoming rather than threatening. "Well," Alex said, checking his equipment, "I guess we're going in." The team that stepped out of the ship was small, but represented the best of what humanity had to offer. Lisa and Ray carried their violins, of course. Sam Davis had brought a portable keyboard. Maya Johnson carried her drumsticks, though she had no drums to play. Dr. Foster carried her scientific instruments, and Alex wore his commander's uniform. As a symbol of humanity's courage, the corridors of the architect's structure were unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls weren't built, they were grown, formed from crystallized sound that had taken on solid form over millions of years. As they walked, their footsteps created small musical notes that joined the constant symphony echoing through the halls. "It's like the whole place is alive," Maya observed, running her hand along a wall that hummed with gentle warmth. They followed the music deeper into the structure until they reached a vast chamber at its heart. The room was spherical, its walls covered with floating platforms that held what looked like musical instruments from 1,000 different species. At the center of the chamber stood a figure that made them all stop and wonder. The being was tall and graceful, made of the same singing crystal as the structure around them. But unlike the cold mathematical perfection of the Dominion Council races, this figure radiated warmth and creativity. When it spoke, its voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Welcome, young musicians of Earth," the architect said. "I have been waiting for you for a very long time." Lisa found her voice first. "You're one of the architects? But we thought you had all disappeared." "Not disappeared," the being replied with what might have been a smile. "We simply moved beyond the need for physical form. But one of us remained here to oversee the test we left behind. The test that you have been taking without even knowing it." Ray stepped forward, his violin still in his hands. "What test?" "We've just been defending ourselves from the Dominion Council." The architect gestured to the instruments floating around them. This galaxy was once filled with music, with art, with the creative chaos that makes life worth living. Every species had their own songs, their own ways of expressing the joy and sorrow of existence. But over time, they began to believe that logic was superior to emotion, that efficiency was more important than beauty. "The Dominion Council," Alex said, understanding beginning to dawn. "Yes, they are not evil, these evolved races. They simply forgot what it means to feel. They achieved perfection at the cost of their souls. One by one, every species in the galaxy made the same choice. They abandoned their music, their art, their dreams, in favor of cold reason." The architect moved to one of the floating platforms and touched an instrument that looked like a harp made of starlight. A single note rang out, beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. "We architects grew tired of ruling a galaxy that had forgotten how to sing, so we created a test scattered crystals throughout space that would respond only to beings who still possessed the creative spark. We waited for eons, hoping that somewhere in the vast cosmos, a species would emerge that remembered what all the others had forgotten." Lisa raised her violin. "And we passed the test?" "You did more than pass it," the architect replied. "You reminded us why music matters. When we heard your songs echoing across the dimensions, when we saw how you turned art into a weapon of defense, rather than destruction, we knew that the galaxy was ready for a new beginning." The chamber around them began to change. The floating instruments descended to form a massive orchestra, and the walls themselves became part of the ensemble. The architect gestured for the humans to take their places. "Play," it said simply. "Play with all your heart, and show the galaxy what it has been missing." Lisa and Ray raised their violins together. Sam sat down at a keyboard that appeared beneath his hands. Maya found a set of drums that materialized from the singing crystal floor. Dr. Foster and Alex watched in amazement as the chamber transformed into the greatest concert hall in galactic history. The music that filled the space was beyond description. It was every human song that had ever been sung, every melody that had ever moved a heart to tears or joy. It was the sound of children laughing, of lovers meeting, of heroes standing against impossible odds. It was the music of hope itself. As they played, the architect joined them, its crystalline form becoming part of the symphony. The music spread outward from the galactic core, carried by quantum harmonics to every corner of space. On Dominion Council ships, hardened warriors stopped their preparations for war and listened with confusion to sounds they had thought were primitive noise. On worlds that had been silent for millennia, beings who had forgotten how to feel began to remember what it meant to be alive. The test was complete, but it was also just the beginning. The architects had found their successors, the ones who would help the galaxy rediscover its lost soul. And at the heart of it all, two human violinists played a duet that would echo through eternity, teaching the stars themselves to sing once more. 1 year after the great concert at the galactic core, the universe had become a very different place. The music that Lisa Park and Ray Williams played in the architect's chamber had spread across every inhabited world, carried by quantum waves that traveled faster than light itself. What started as a simple violin duet had become the foundation for the greatest transformation in galactic history. Commander Alex Rivera stood on the observation deck of the new Earth Embassy station, watching ships from dozens of different species arrive for the first Galactic Music Festival. The station floated in neutral space between the old Dominion Council territory and human space, its crystal hull singing softly as vessels docked at its many ports. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," said Captain Jenny Morris, joining him at the viewing window. "Remember when we thought those ships were coming to destroy us?" Alex smiled as he watched a massive Veil 10 crystal ship gracefully dock next to a smaller human vessel. "Now they're coming to learn how to sing again. I'm not sure which is more amazing." The changes had started slowly. After the music reached the Dominion Council fleets, something unexpected happened. The warriors who had spent centuries following orders without question began to ask new kinds of questions. They wondered why they fought, what they were protecting, and whether there might be better ways to live. Elder Zixthara had been the first council member to request a meeting with the humans. Her crystalline form had changed over the months, developing new colors and patterns that her species hadn't seen for thousands of years. She now served as the primary ambassador between the old Dominion races and the growing community of worlds that were rediscovering their creative spirits. "Ambassador Rivera," came a familiar chiming voice behind him. Alex turned to see Zixthara approaching, her crystal body glowing with warm golden light. She had learned to speak with more emotion in her voice, though it still sounded like distant music. "Elder Zixthara," Alex replied with a slight bow. "How are the preparations going for tonight's performance?" "Better than we hoped," she answered. "My people have remembered songs we thought were lost forever. The young ones especially are eager to learn. They want to understand how we ever convinced ourselves that logic was more important than beauty." They walked together toward the station's main concert hall, passing beings from across the galaxy. Mechanical Nexus robots sat in meditation circles with energy being flux, learning how to feel emotions their creators had programmed out of them. Stone-skinned eternal elders played simple wooden flutes, their ancient faces showing wonder at the sounds they could create. In the main hall, preparations were underway for the evening's grand concert. Lisa Park stood at the center of the vast stage, helping various alien species tune their rediscovered instruments. Her violin had become famous across the galaxy, but she remained the same humble musician who had started it all by playing Bach in the ruins of New Geneva Colony. "How's it going, Lisa?" Alex asked as he approached the stage. "Wonderful and terrifying," she replied with a laugh. "Do you know how hard it is to conduct an orchestra when half the musicians communicate through color changes and the other half exist in 4 dimensions?" Ray Williams looked up from where he was working with a group of young Cadmeran warriors. The fierce alien soldiers were learning to play stringed instruments, their battle-scarred hands surprisingly gentle on the delicate strings. "The Cadmeran are natural musicians," Ray reported. "Their warrior songs are incredibly complex. They've been singing battle hymns for thousands of years without realizing they were making art." Nearby, Sam Davis sat at a massive instrument that looked like a cross between a piano and a star map. He was teaching a group of collective members how to improvise, helping the hive mind species learn that individual expression could enhance their shared consciousness rather than threaten it. "Jazz is perfect for them," Sam explained to Dr. Foster, who was documenting everything for the historical record. "They can play together as one mind, but now they're adding personal touches that make the music richer and more complex." Maya Johnson had perhaps the biggest challenge of all. She was working with representatives from 12 different species, teaching them to find the rhythm that connected all living things. Her drum kit had grown into a massive percussion section that filled half the stage, with instruments that created sounds and frequencies only some species could hear. "Rhythm is universal," Maya said as she demonstrated a complex pattern to a group of energy beings. "Every heart beats, every star pulses, every planet spins. Music just helps us hear what was always there." Dr. Foster moved through the crowd, with her recording devices, documenting the historic gathering. "Alex," she said, finding the commander near the stage, "we're witnessing the birth of a new kind of civilization. The old Dominion Council governed through fear and control. But this is governance through harmony and cooperation." As evening approached, beings from across the galaxy took their seats in the great concert hall. The audience was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Ancient crystalline elders sat next to human children. Machine intelligences that had never felt joy hummed softly in anticipation. Energy beings created light shows that painted the ceiling with colors that had no names. That Lisa and Ray took their positions at the center of the stage, their violins ready. Around them, the greatest orchestra in galactic history waited for their signal. There were traditional instruments from 1,000 worlds, crystal formations that sang in harmonics beyond human hearing, and technologies that turned mathematical equations into pure sound. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all forms. Alex announced from the podium, "Welcome to the First Galactic Symphony. Tonight, we celebrate not the conquest of space, but the conquest of silence. We gather not as different species competing for resources, but as musicians in the greatest orchestra ever assembled." Lisa raised her violin and played the opening, notes of the piece she and Ray had composed for this moment. It started simply with the same Bach-inspired melody that had first awakened the crystal on New Geneva. But as other instruments joined in, the music became something entirely new. The Veil 10 crystals added harmonic frequencies that made the air itself sing. The Nexus machines contributed rhythmic patterns based on the mathematical beauty of prime numbers. The Flux energy beings painted the music with light that danced in perfect synchronization with every note dot. As the symphony progressed, something magical happened. The different musical traditions didn't compete with each other. They combined, creating new forms of beauty that none of the species could have achieved alone. The warrior songs of the Cadmeran blended with the mechanical precision of the Nexus. The ancient stone melodies of the Eternal provided a foundation for the wild improvisations of human jazz. The music reached beyond the concert hall, broadcast across the galaxy by the architect crystals that now grew on every inhabited world. On planets that had been silent for millennia, beings stopped their daily routines to listen. Children who had never heard a lullaby began to sing along. Elders who had forgotten how to cry found tears streaming down their faces. But the greatest miracle was happening in the concert hall itself. As the music swelled to its climax, the boundaries between the different species began to blur. The collective's hive mind opened to include individual thoughts from other races. The Eternal Stone Slow consciousness experienced the rapid joy of human emotion. For a few precious moments, every being in the hall felt what it was like to be someone else, to see the universe through different eyes and hear it with different ears. The symphony ended with Lisa and Ray playing alone, their violins singing the simple human melody that had started everything. But now the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of possibility, pregnant with all the songs yet to be written and all the harmony yet to be discovered. In that moment, the galaxy finally understood what the architects had been trying to teach them. The greatest power in the universe wasn't the ability to destroy or control. It was the ability to create something beautiful together, to take the chaos of existence and turn it into music that made every living being feel less alone. The age of the Dominion Council was over. The age of the Galactic Symphony had begun, and its first note would echo through eternity.